What a welcome.
Excellent.
Mr. Clerk, whenever you're ready, we'll do a roll call.
You got it. I am ready.
Okay, we'll call to order the August 8th, 2024 Regional Planning Governing Board and start with the roll call.
All right. Devin Rees,
Here.
Clara Andriola,
Present.
Donald Abbott,
Here.
Jenny Breckus, absent. Mike Clark, also absent. Naomi Dewar,
Here.
Jean Herman, also absent. And Charlene Bybee for Ed Lawson.
Here.
Kathleen Taylor, also absent. Diane Vanderwell.
Here.
And non-voting member Beth Smith.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I'll also ask for the salute to the flag to be done by Ms. Smith. Would you do us the honor?
I would love to. Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that honor, Chair Reese.
Always a privilege. At this time, we'll move on to item 3, which is the election of officers. But I did notice that we did not do a question about whether there was public comment, and I probably should have done that. But is it further along? Okay. As long as we can do that in that order, that's fine. Okay. We'll go then to the election of officers, and I'll start by just saying what a privilege it's been to be the chair of this body during the last year, although I will say it was fairly easy on me. I know some other chairs have had much more difficult circumstances to navigate and different kinds of projects. It's been a privilege to get to work with all of you on this board, as well as you, Dr. Smith, and your staff, because you're a great agency doing incredible work. And I know that the next couple of months will be important as we move forward with a number of different initiatives, but what an absolute joy to serve. So thank you so much for the pleasure and privilege of doing that. The A item here is the election of the chair, and I'm going to turn that over to my friend, Councilmember Diane Vanderwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And with that, I would like to nominate Commissioner Andriola to become the chair for and represent Washoe County.
All right, second.
Okay, outstanding. I have a first by Ms. Vanderwell and a second by Ms. Dewar. Any questions or comments by the body? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Congratulations, Ms. Andriola, and I'll turn the gavel over to you, as we have a tradition of doing that right in the meeting.
You don't
Would you
even
like-
want to finish the vice chair. board,
I
huh?
know, no, I've got to push everything off on you.
Oh, how about that? What are friends for?
Yes, that's right. So here's the gavel.
Well,
You are
thank
now in
you.
charge.
Okay. Thank you so much. So we'll move to the election of the vice chair.
Madam Chair, if I
Yes,
may, I would
yes.
like to recommend my friend and colleague from the City of Sparks, Diane Vanderwell, for the vice chair.
Great.
Second. I will second that. I was going to make the nomination from the city
man.
of Sparks, and then Reno jumped right
So
in.
bipartisan here. We're just all one big happy family.
So I will gladly second the nomination of Councilwoman Vanderwell for vice chair.
Great. So we have a motion and a second by Charlene Bybee. Motion by Mr. Reese, second by Charlene Bybee. Any discussion? Okay, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Congratulations, Ms. Vanderwell.
Thank you.
Wouldn't it be funny if I said I had to leave and I'm going to move it over to you? I was really tempted to do that, but I am going to continue my responsibility. That's true. Okay, you're right. That's a good point. I'll move to item number 4, approval of the agenda. I'm looking for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion or changes to note? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I'll move now to the approval of the minutes. Any noted changes on that?
Move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion by
Second.
Ms. Vanderbilt, a second by Ms. Dorr.
Madam Chair. Since I was not in attendance, I won't be voting to approve the minutes because I wasn't there. And I know we can, let me ask legal. Some boards say yes, some say no. What is the opinion of our legal?
Thank you, Councilwoman Bybee. I recommend, as long as you have reviewed the minutes, that you are
Okay.
capable of voting on this item.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay,
Then I
great.
withdraw that.
Thank you. I go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. I'll move to item 6, which is public comment. Mr. Clerk, do we have any public comment?
We've received none that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll move now to the consent agenda item, which is A and B, and noted on the agenda. Is there any discussion, or anybody would like to pull anything?
Move to approve consent agenda.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Vanderwell. Do we have a second? Second by Ms. Dorr. Any discussion? Okay, all those signify by saying aye if you approve.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Let's see, is there a fastest record for, if we keep on going? All right, I'm telling you. We'll move to item number 8, the business of the day. It's item A, the presentation and possible feedback to staff regarding an update on the Truckee Meadows annual report. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
Shawnee Sousa, Team RPA for the record. I'm going to be taking you guys through the Truckee Meadows Annual Report, also known as the TMAR. We go through this every year, so you might be kind of more familiar with it. Sorry, I'm getting over a cold. I hope it does not do that this whole time. So yeah, we go through it every year, and actually each jurisdiction and government agency, affected government agencies, are to submit a report to us around April 1st of each year. And so we kind of take what they say and compare it and assess it with the regional plan and see, how everyone's doing, how the region is performing. And so we have our 5 different categories, which is population, dwelling units, housing, land use, and employment. Those are our main categories. And housing we actually added last year. So what's cool about the TMAR is, we all work on it in TMAR-PA, and we look at how we can improve it each year. So we really liked adding housing, and we plan to do more work in housing in general. So that was a cool addition. And then we also have summaries, and those are at the end, and I'll just briefly take you through each of these now. Maybe. Okay. So first, we'll just take a quick look at population. Here you can see our population breakdown by jurisdiction, and if you hover over each of these, you can get a little closer look at how each of the numbers grow. And same with over here. You can hover over Washoe County, Sparks, Reno. You can see that we're growing a little bit slower this year, and actually that's reflected in our average growth rate. Last year it was 0.96, this year it's 0.81. And over here we have just a brief snapshot of demographics. Next, we'll take a look at dwelling units. On the left, you can see that we're looking at total units by jurisdiction since 2019, and on the right, we're actually looking at by tier. And so once again, when you hover kind of over the legend, what's nice is you can see, okay, when did maybe the mixed-use core see the most growth? And here you can see that in 2020 we saw some more, and it's kind of tapered down since. And then you can look, which tier have we seen more? Tier 2 seems to be a little bit higher. Then we'll scroll on down. If you want to get more into the specifics of each of those, then we can look at single family versus multifamily, and you can hover over each of these amounts. And for each of our graphs, as you go through the TMAR, it kind of varies, but we do either 5 years or 10 years in the past, depending on what we're looking at. And we're really just trying to add. So if we can do 10 years, and if it makes sense, we show a little bit more and give you more context. Next is housing, which, as I said, we added last year. Here you can look at things like the median home sales price. We saw a significant jump from 20 to 2021. This year, we're seeing it go down, which I hope it keeps doing that. Then next, we have the average rental price, or our median income, and you can kind of compare how are we keeping up. Here we have the percentage of those who rent versus own, so about 41% rent, and owning is about 59%. And just as a reminder, we do have our housing tracker. We work with the Nevada Housing Division on this, and so we're always trying to, keep it updated. This year we're a little behind. They've had some turnover, but this is also a cool little highlight to check back in on if you're on this page. Next, we have land use. So it's really breaking down land use once again by jurisdiction and by tier. Here you can see, I can't really read it, but single family is the highest. And we also have the acreage over here, as I said. And if you want to get more into like our project regulatory accounts over at Team RPA, you can do that as well. Next, we have employment. So we have our average employment growth rate. This year, we are in the process of updating our consensus forecast. So this graph will actually be updated early next week, but I believe it's relatively the same, around the same rate. Here we have by industry, so from 2022 to 2023. So if you hover over each of these, once again, we can isolate. And I know that we saw some growth in retail and as well as accommodation and food services. And actually the percent or the number of employees gained last year, I believe was around 6,000. This year it's around 4,000. The difference in percent share. And then finally, we have our summary. So here we take what each of the jurisdictions and affected agencies have submitted to us, and we kind of compile, look at what they've said, and we try to give you a short little synopsis here. But we also have a link to the bottom to each of their reports as well, so you can really dive in. And what we've also done is the information that they're submitting now includes CIPs, and so that is actually feeding into our public infrastructure plan. So all this is coming together and working with all the other projects we have going on at Team RPA. So with that, I hope you guys get to check it out on your own. It's pretty cool, and if you have any questions, I'm available. Thanks.
Thank you. That's really exciting.
Yeah, I always like working on this one, so.
Yeah, I can tell. Thank you. Do you have a question? Yes, Ms. Bybee.
So, so my question would be, fascinating, some of it's hard to see sitting
Yes, it
here.
is.
So for us, or say for the general public that might be watching this, how do people access that? Is it just simply online? Is there a link to it? Because
Yes.
obviously you've got so much in there. And I love the being able to click and roll over it and get that data. How do we get that?
Yeah, sure. So if you go to projects and resources and then you scroll down to Truckee Meadows annual report, we have it there. We've also been posting it a bunch on social media. We try to make sure that everyone knows about it, that jurisdictions know about it. And for this, you can actually download all this data too. So if you look here, you can click and download it too. Does that
So
answer
is
your
it
question?
for the general public? Do they
Yes.
go to TMRPA
Yes, TMRPA.
website? And then what did you say? I missed what the title was.
So you go to Team RPA's website, then you go to our main Projects and Resources tab. and you
Projects and
scro-
Resources?
Yes, yep,
Okay.
and then scroll down to Truckee Meadows annual report.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Smith?
All right, is that on? All right.
Yes.
Thank you so much. The school district is very grateful for the opportunity to participate. We do every year. Once these reports are finalized, that is the jumping off point for our 5-year plan, which we bring forward. But one of the things that I wanted to suggest is that I also noticed and was curious if we invite in the state public charter school authority into this process. They're also a public education entity, just like ours, with a growing portfolio of schools. So I was curious if they were invited for this process, or perhaps we could extend that invitation starting next year.
Sure. I'm going to pass it off to Jeremy. I'm not quite sure. on
Yeah,
that.
Jeremy Swift, for the record. It's a great question. It's the requirements in state law, as I understand it, are for the jurisdictions and what are known as the affected entities are required to submit us the annual reports by April 1st. That does not include state agencies. However, that doesn't preclude us from asking them to participate, so I'd be happy to do that.
And that's interesting for me because the State Public Charter School Authority has a growing portfolio of schools into the thousands of students at this point. So I, of course, am not our legal representation, but I would argue they operate alongside us. They are in our community, and at the very least, it would be nice if we extended that invitation and just perhaps take a close look to make sure that they're not supposed to be participating because their schools are right next to us.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Madam Chair, if I may weigh in on that last subject area. Affected entity is a defined term in your statutes, and it is defined as an entity having responsibility for planning or providing public facilities, including public education. Currently, the Washoe County School District is the only one who has that actual responsibility. Therefore, they are welcome to participate on a voluntary basis, but this report, as it has evolved, is a compilation of reports submitted, as Director Smith stated, that are statutorily required by the affected entities.
And that's excellent clarification. So perhaps if the body was interested, we could extend it as an invitation.
Sure.
Of course, want to stay within the realms of the agenda item, but I would argue these schools are operating in our communities, so at the very least, my hope is that they would be open to an invitation to participate as good neighbors.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it. We'll move now to the presentation, item 8B, presentation and possible discussion regarding the 2024. I don't know. Is it, do you need a motion? Okay, perfect.
Accept the report.
Thank you.
And I'll second.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Good thing I haven't moved this. Yeah. Donald, did you agree with the motion?
Yeah, my apologies.
No, that's okay. We heard you. Just making sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So now we'll move.
Yep, sounds good, Madam Chair. Thank you, Jeremy Smith, for the record. Item 8B is a presentation and possible discussion regarding the 2024 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan update. This is the work we've been doing for the past few years, working towards the October meeting, where we are very hopeful and on track to present these new materials, our updated regional plan for adoption. And so what we want to do today is take you through a presentation, some reminders, slides, some new stuff as well, and kind of let you know where we're at, kind of moving towards that October date, and be happy to answer any questions you guys have about the process. So with that, we can go to the next slide. In 2019, you'll all probably remember, we did a major overhaul of the regional plan. Completely took the old document, set it aside, took stuff out of it. We did these amazing Sankey diagrams that showed how we took all the policies and stuck them into this new regional plan, the 2019 version. And we limited, we had about 144 goals and policies in the old plan, I believe. Now we're down to 60-something. And so we really kind of honed the plan, made it readable by humans, and really tried to embed it back into the mandate from state law, the NRS mandate that describes the title of the statute as Contents of the Regional Plan. And so that is what really has driven the changes that we employed together collectively back in 2019. But we also realized at that time that in order to meet that state mandate, there were two initiatives that we really needed to put a little bit more effort into, and specifically natural resources planning and also infrastructure. And so we have been working on these two initiatives as we've moved from 2019 to create a natural resources plan, which really brings together data and information and narratives around natural resources. It's a huge topic area, really neat. And also a public infrastructure plan, which collects and synthesizes information provided by the jurisdictions and affected entities with regard to their capital improvement programs. And so we're going to hear more detail about that, but basically we tasked ourselves with these two policies back in 19, NR1 and PF3. So we are very close to delivering all of these materials. Let's keep going. All right, so here is the pillars of regional planning slide that Shawnee was kind enough to create for me. And basically what we're trying to do here is illustrate the foundational nature of these efforts, right? So on the left, in the first pillar there, you see natural resources. So that now, basically, it's a document that exists, it's a database, there's a map, there's all this information, and it's a living effort that as we learn more about the region, as topics maybe fall to the wayside or come up in terms of natural resources, we can bring them under the umbrella of our natural resources plan, continue to update it, and that becomes a foundational aspect that feeds the policies that live up in that regional plan up top. Likewise, if you go to the far right box, we see the public infrastructure plan column there. Another foundational pillar, this time meeting our statutory mandate to track the spending for infrastructure to both maintain the great quality of life we have right now, but also to accommodate growth as we move forward as a region. And so, again, it's the information in these plans is foundational, and it influences the policies that we try to implement up there in that regional plan. So those are the two that we're going to talk about in detail with Chris and Nate here in a sec. And then the one in the middle is we do a lot of work. We do the consensus forecast that Shawnee mentioned. You just saw the Truckee Meadows annual report. We did the regional strategy for housing affordability, or helped with it. We did a housing study. We do a lot of modeling for the RTC, for their transportation demand model. And so what I'm proposing basically is as we get through this adoption moment in October and we get into the next 5-year chunk, that will be an emphasis of our work to create the third pillar, which is our population and housing and forecasting work, and put it all in this document that makes it very accessible and transparent to everyone to see how we're doing this stuff. And to, again, all of these are living documents that are going to react to the changing conditions of the region, just like the regional plan, which is why we look at it every year, but also we do a really deep look every 5 years, and that's what we're coming up on here in October. So let's do the next slide. So with that in mind, these foundations of information and data that are updated regularly and consistently feed the regional plan and feed into how we approach our casework, which is really our regulatory role is to look at master plan conformance with the regional plan, so the 3 jurisdictions master plans, and any of our affected entities facilities plans also. If they're in existence, then they would be also subject to that conformance review. Further, projects of regional significance, that's something we've talked about a lot. And so if those triggers are hit, then we will also do that conformance review, and finally, regional plan amendments. So really trying to get these aegis efforts and an organization around how we approach the role of regional planning in the region and make it very clear and embed it, again, in the mandate of state law. So that's the plan. And thanks, Shawnee, for making me my pillar slide. Okay, next slide. I'm going to turn it over to Nate Kusha, who will take us through the natural resources aspects.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the board. Nate Kusha for the record. As Jeremy mentioned, I'll walk through where we're at with the Natural Resources Plan. So just a little reminder of what even is this, right? So as Jeremy mentioned, we noticed the last update, we really need to work on our natural resources policies in the regional plan. So we came up with this idea of the Natural Resources Plan. And it's really to better meet our NRS requirements when it comes to natural resources. NRS specifically says that we should have a map that tells us what areas are best suited for development. So as part of the Natural Resources Plan, we're creating our NRCA, or Natural Resource Considerations Areas Map, which we'll talk about a little later more in detail. But that, along with our DCA, will essentially form that map of where is best and where is not best suited for development. Also, to bring together as much data and information as we can for all these different natural resource topics that we have kind of, after talking to the experts and working with the jurisdictions and the affected entities, decided for this first round anyways of the Natural Resource Plan are kind of the important ones to talk about today, what the issues are, what there are opportunities or challenges. And then also to then identify a subset of that data and information to feed into policies and policy discussions for our updated regional plan in October. And we'll talk about those in a minute. So as part of that data piece that we just talked about, we have created our natural resource data portal. If you haven't checked it out already, please do. It's on our website. If you go to where Shawnee was pointing, our projects and resources tab, we have our natural resources plan, and you can access the data portal there. It has all of the data that we could find, and actually our consultant went out and found most of this data for us, and you can search within any of the categories of the natural resource plan, as well as further defined by topics, and try to search for whatever you're interested in, whatever you want to know about, and find what data we have for that. And this also will continue to grow over time. We'll continue to add data to it and maintain it on a regular basis. And we've already been adding things to it. We've added all the Truckee River Information Gateway. We migrated all of that into this data portal. So there's a lot there, so go check it out. As far as the plan document itself, we did a version 1 draft where we had most of the pieces there, but not quite everything. We got a lot of comments and feedback back on that. So we incorporated all that. We finished out all the missing pieces we have. We're now on version 2, and this is accessible at the website you see there. That's our regional plan update page on our website, and you access that the same way. Go to our Project and Resources regional plan update page, and so you can check out version 2, and if you guys want to give us any feedback on that, we're hoping that after we take all of the comments and feedback from this version 2 round, we'll put that into a version 3, which we've already received comments from the tribes submitted us comments. I know that Washoe County Parks is sending comments. So we're getting feedback on this, incorporating all that, and hopefully that final version 3 will be our final version that will go along with the adoption of the regional plan in October. So with that, what's this look like? So this is kind of a table of contents of what the plan looks like. You can see we have an intro, and then our next 6 chapters are broken down by our categories with the underlying topics. And then finally, we end with the conclusion, which is really about the policy implications. That gets you to what does this look like for the regional plan itself, and what are we looking to feed up into that plan for actual policy language. And then we have our lovely appendix that our consultant, Stantec, formerly Cardno, provided us, which is a kind of case studies and best practices memorandum that you can check out as well. So, moving on to our policies. So we, through this natural resource plan effort, have identified these 4 policies that hopefully you've all have seen in some version already. We've been talking about them for a while now, but they're really source water protection, regional trails, tribal coordination, and that natural resource consideration areas, which I mentioned earlier. And these are the 4 that we hope to adopt into the new regional plan in October, and we'll walk through those briefly. But the first one is really about source water protection, and that's really, we've been working on this effort, the source water, for a number of years now with partners like WRWC and RCI, and really on that 2020 Integrated Source Water Protection Plan. We provide a lot of mapping and background data for that, so a lot of the background information for this has been going on for years, even before the Natural Resource Plan started. So we're just really hoping to incorporate that into the regional plan and ask the local jurisdictions and affected entity master plans to just identify that plan, acknowledge it's there, and utilize it. And then also, along with that, they have a map of source water protection areas. So when they trigger a critical source water protection area, if a project comes through that's in that, we're really asking to receive or to ask for comments from the appropriate entities, which would be like TUMWA for most of them, or other water service providers. And that plan is available at washingtoncleanwater.org. If you don't know about that, check it out. Similarly, we have our regional trails policy, and it's really the same sort of idea as the source water protection plan. We've worked on the Truckee Meadows Trails Plan, done a lot of background work with that with the Truckee Meadows Parks Foundation and the Truckee Meadows Trails Group. And so, yet again, recognize that plan, utilize it, and request comments from the appropriate entity, which would be kind of the Truckee Meadows Trails Working Group. And that's really if a project comes in that maybe is in close proximity to maybe a proposed trail or maybe a desired trail, things like that, just so we're coordinating all of our planning efforts and really getting our trail connections in place. And that's available at the Truckee Meadows Parks Foundation website, that plan as well. Moving on to tribal coordination. So through our past casework and through this natural resource planning effort, we've kind of recognized a greater need to better coordinate with the tribal governments in the region, right? And really incorporate their perspective into our development and review process. So at Team RPA, we're really committed to trying to meet with them on a regular basis. We talked with RSIC a couple weeks back. We're in coordination with the Pyramid Lake Paiute tribe as well, and we're really trying to set up regular meetings, possibly on a quarterly basis is what we've kind of proposed. We're not sure exactly the timeframes yet, but just to meet on a regular scheduled basis. Along with that, to make sure that we are sending them any cases of note for them to comment on. So if we see something that is maybe in a close proximity to tribal lands or an area of note that the tribe has kind of, hopefully, we're in coordination with them, but providing us areas that are maybe are important from the tribal perspective, and we can say, okay, well, this is in close proximity, we can route the case to them, we can get the comments from them and provide those comments in our initial review memo to the jurisdictions as well. Along with that, we're going to be making all of our initial review memos available publicly on a page on our website. So anytime we do a initial review on a case, which happens before the development or proposal goes through the jurisdictional review process, that'll be up on our website. Anybody can go take a look, see Regional's perspective on any of those cases. Finally, we come to our natural resource consideration areas. So this is really envisioned as kind of two separate things. There's a policy which delineates kind of what does it mean when it's in a natural resource consideration area, and then a map and spatial tool that goes along with it. So this is really going to be a companion to that development constraints area, which is already a policy in the regional plan, and that's sort of a hard constraint. This natural resource considerations areas is sort of a softer constraint, but just things that, just because it's outside of the DCA, or development constraint area, doesn't mean that we shouldn't consider it at all. So we still want to be looking at those things and considering them. So we're creating a map and a tool that if a project comes to regional, we will put it into this map and tool, and it'll tell us all of the different layers that it interacts with. Go to the next slide here, which are these layers that we've noted for inclusion in this policy. So if it triggers, like if it's in an area with slopes of 15 to 30%, something we should be aware of, we'll note that, and it'll give us a percent coverage of the proposal. So if the site, 70% of that site is slopes 15 to 30%, our tool that we run it through will tell us that. We'll provide that readout along with our initial review memo for any case that'll come to regional. This will also be a publicly available tool and map for anybody to utilize. So our hope is that the general public may be interested, or especially local planners at the jurisdictions may use it for cases that won't come to regional, even though it's not required. So these are kind of the list of layers that we've come up with, and all of these layers we're making sure are vetted from a reliable source and regularly maintained so that we have good data for the basis of this policy. So with that, what's the next steps for this? As I mentioned, version 2 is up on our regional plan update website. You can go check that out, give us comments or feedback, tell anybody you know, we're taking comments from anybody. We have our draft policy language for all of these policies that kind of outlined here in our version 1 redlined regional plan, which is also up on our regional plan update website. You can check those out. We've also talked a lot about those here, so hopefully you're aware. And then we're hoping to have one more version of this, version 3, to kind of be the final one that will go along for adoption with the regional plan on October 10th. So I guess I'll hold there and see if there's any questions about the natural resource plan before we move on to the public infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr.
Sorry, really good presentation. It's the most comprehensive one I've seen so far, so thank you. Can you go back a slide?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have these natural resource consideration areas, a new title. And I guess you've tried to explain, or you have explained a little bit about how they'll be used.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I was wondering, are they all developed at this point, or you're going to be continuing to develop them, or?
So the data for these, I think that we have final pieces for all of these data layers. So we've been vetting these through the Regional Planning Commission and the working group. So the data, background data for all of these layers are in place, and they are from kind of the authority on whatever
Right.
topic it is.
Okay, so I wanted to ask about, so I see on here the wildlife habitat migration, and I was wondering, is there a companion plant one? Is that, you have endangered threatened species, but some of these plants may not be in that category, but they may be rare, or they may be not rare. You know, it's good to know, do we have juniper pinyon, or do we have sagebrush, or what kind of plants do we have?
Right. So for this kind of first pass, we've really gone with data that kind of has everyone has agreed upon within the working group and the planning commission, and things that we know that there is reliable data for. So things like wildlife habitat migration corridors, all of that data is coming from NDOW, the source on that. I don't believe that there is any plants in that one. We do have the endangered and threatened species plants, but beyond endangered and threatened species, we don't have, I think, other plant considerations.
A couple things. There are maps of the plant cover, and there are also a whole other field, geology. It might be good to know what kind of rocks are in underlay. For example, one of the planning considerations as we move up the slopes is how friable the rocks are, or how strong, and what kind of soils they have. And I know there's maps from like the up at the university that have soil maps, and they also have rock maps. And I think it's interesting and important because they also have, for example, fault corridors, so where we know where we would have earthquakes, and that might be a sensitive area for consideration when we go to plan something. Are we building a road right on a fault, or a critical facility like urgent care or something? It would be important, I think, if we have the general data. Like often we will have them do a more specific detailed dive. But it's good for you all if they don't do that, because some of them do not do that, to have that base information.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, and we can definitely look into those sorts of information. We do have to kind of find comprehensive mapping regionally.
Believe me, they have been mapping
Okay.
rocks and soil here for decades,
Right.
upon decades.
And at one point, we did have.
They don't move so much like animals and plants.
Sure. We did have hazards in here, I know, at one point, but I think the mapping of and the sort of consensus on what hazards should or shouldn't be included was sort of a sticking point. It was hard to find reliable
I
data
don't think
and
it's
figure
that
out.
much of a sticking point. I think it's really important to also not site important critical facilities or even housing in hazard areas. That could be wildlife area hazards, earthquakes, as we mentioned, flood. FEMA's just come out with a whole set of new maps that, in our case, Reno, we're vetting these new FEMA maps, which are much more extensive. But I mean, to have that in, you're such data people, to be able to pull that into your analysis and make sure that, you know, those issues are covered, especially for, let's say, not as technical readers, if it's just right there. You know, they don't have to do the research. So that's one thing I wanted to ask. The other thing I wanted to ask is, you mentioned how you will use it here, but I also know that the master plan is a reference point for the individual city and county master plans that you evaluate against. So with adopting the natural resource plan, are you looking for us to have components in our master plans that would mirror this?
So for the natural resource plan itself, no, that is just an information document, as Director Smith mentioned, that kind of feeds up into our regional plan. So anything that we would be asking the jurisdictions to include in their master plans will be included in policy language in the regional plan itself.
Well, like, for example, in our master plan, we have policies about slopes, about wildlife corridors, about, you know, not critical water source, because I have to compliment you on that. That's many states and regions do that, but to my knowledge, we hadn't. You know, the trails or the floodplains. I mean, I think all of this is really important information that, and then we have companion policies already. And it would be good then, since we have these policies, I don't know if everybody does, that maybe everybody should, like county and the Sparks, and we should review ours and make sure they're accurate and current. So is that something you guys could talk over at your group that you're working on?
Yeah. And so the sort of vision for this policy too is because this natural resource consideration will be policy language in the regional plan. And what we are doing is we're providing the readout report that tells you if you're triggering these things. And what we're looking for then at that point for any cases that come to regional is for those to be considered, just as the policy sort of mentions, and addressed in some way. So if we say that you're triggering a critical source water protection area, we want to make sure that you've addressed that in some way. So for the city of Reno, if you have policies for trails or whatever it is, then you can just say, oh, this triggered this policy and we looked into it and that's how we addressed it.
Gotcha.
That's what we're looking for.
One last, if I may, Madam Chair. I was just going to say, the NDOW, they might be the ultimate source for a certain group of animals, but not all animals. So they track primarily animals that we hunt or we fish. But there are other animals that aren't considered those and fall in those species. And it might be, I'm just going to pick one out, a donkey. It might be, I don't even know if we have them here. It might be coyotes. I mean, you know, or something that is not, we don't have regular hunts on. And I would like to see if you guys could reach out a little further. When I asked you, one of the people that supported development of this plan, when I asked you, I was hoping that you would have, you know, especially in the animal, fish area, reach out to multiple sources. And of course, I am thinking a little, I don't know what the right word is, but focused on my ward, you know, horses are a big deal. NDOW isn't involved in that issue, but we do have other sources of information about the range and so on, numbers, all that stuff. That would be great to have.
Yeah, we can definitely, as you know, as any policy in the regional plan, we can also amend this going forward. And as we get more data and information, we can include more data layers into this as well.
Okay.
This is the stuff that we could know that we decided, I think, that we could address at this point and get the information from a reliable source that's regularly maintained. So we can continue to reach out, and we would love to have, you know, your input on those organizations
Yeah,
and things that have
I'm
that
in touch
data.
with quite a few different organizations that do maintain, you know.
Yeah, perfect. So if we can continue to get that data, we can always amend the
Okay.
policy. We can add the data in, and we can put that as part of the natural resource considerations areas as well into the future.
All right, thanks.
Madam Chair, if I may just kind of add to that, I think great points, and we will get straight away looking at some of these topic areas that you mentioned. I think Nate's point about the fact that, you know, we're establishing this. This is the first time we've had this, and so it is a living thing, and we will be able to add to it. The degree that we'll be able to get it in before adoption, I don't know, but we'll
Right.
certainly try,
Okay.
as long as everyone is on board. But it's an ongoing thing, and we're going to continue to address it. So appreciate those
All
comments.
right.
Thank you.
that-
Thank you. Any other questions? Ms. Smith?
Thank you so much. So, Ms. Prunty, I'm going to guess that the same definition of entities applies to this plan as well, too, right? In terms of participating entities?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
There's only one definition of an affected entity,
Very good, okay.
which also specifically excludes state agencies.
Sounds good, then I'll keep it brief that in the next rendition of this, I think that it would also be powerful. And I don't think it's just really a focus on the State Public Charter School Authority. We have a growing portfolio of parochial schools, private schools, totally recognize that an invitation is at their discretion to accept or not to accept. But I do think that as the portfolio of education is expanding across the Truckee Meadows, we should welcome in those voices, particularly because of the traffic impacts. Many of these schools have no or very little mass transit, and so I do think that there could be value in inviting in those plans with 5-year plans like this.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you. Well, that was a nice segue, Ms. Smith, and to talk about infrastructure. Thank you.
A good segue. Chris Tolley, Team RPA, will walk us through the public infrastructure plan component of the 2024 regional plan update. And as a reminder, this is an organizing and summarizing document and effort for public infrastructure, and that is partly based on, or wholly based on, our NRS mandate 0278 or 278-0274. And then this is really an effort that we do quite often, which is regional coordination, but it underscores our role in the overall government scene, so to speak. And then the public infrastructure plan effort is looking to raise and make better informed planning decisions overall. So as mentioned, the NRS, the entire section, the contents of regional plan, but really the public infrastructure plan is focused in subsections 4 and 5. We won't walk through those, but we can if you want to. And what's listed in there in terms of public facilities and infrastructure that we deal with in the regional plan are the water, wastewater, stormwater, flood control, transportation, roads, and schools. These are the 5 service domains that are addressed as part of the public infrastructure plan. And as part of the effort, we brought this forward essentially the first time that we presented on this, and this is the goals, 3 goals. And the first goal, pretty simple, create the actual public infrastructure plan document, and then bring the data together and turn that into usable information through this process. That's goal 2. And then design and implement policy and process improvements in the 2019 regional plan. So that's an overview of the goals that we have been operating under throughout the entire process. And then the entities and jurisdictions we're working with, we like to think of everyone, but they're Samoa, Washoe County School District, the Flood Project, RTC, SVGID, City of Sparks, Washoe County, the airports, City of Reno, and the Western Regional Water Commission. And this is not in a list of an order of importance, but everybody that we're working with. We recognize there are also small little water entities out there that don't fall under the definition of an affected entity, but to the degree to which we can work with them, we would like to. So diving in a little bit on goal 1, and this is, again, the public infrastructure plan is going to address the 5 domains. And then we've got the document drafted and almost ready for review by the jurisdiction and entity staff. And then we're also looking at essentially a finalized set of CIP spending summaries, and we'll step through this stuff on the following slides. And then the next steps for us in terms of goal 1 is to release a draft of this for staff to review at the jurisdictions and entities, as well as release a publicly reviewable draft, and that would be the second goal for this goal. And then goal 2, combine and coalesce the information. So we're really bringing the data, and this is twofold. Data is related to, as you can see on the screen, the pipes, the roads, the other infrastructure pieces that we represent in a GIS format, so that we have data that doesn't end necessarily at a jurisdiction or entity's boundaries, that we have the regional lookup or a regional look at data that at some point in time in the future, that we will have a staff, a password-protected viewer that staff can utilize that crosses, again, jurisdiction and entity boundaries. So that's really kind of bin one in terms of the public infrastructure plan. Bin two is pulling together all the CIP spending information, and that in itself is twofold. Looking back in time to things that were actually constructed, and we consider that the retrospective component, and we utilize the information that is really already existing in the jurisdictions and entities that we can filter through and pull out the chunks that are meant to be as part of this. So that is looking backwards as part of the summary, and then also looking forward, and that is the CIP document itself, and summarizing the spending that occurs by domain and then holistically. And the value that we are adding for this is bringing everything together. That doesn't end at a jurisdiction or entity's boundaries, so that when we're looking at water, we're not just looking at Tumwa, we're looking at Tumwa and SVGID and other water projects that might be out there at a jurisdiction or another entity. So those summaries are essentially created. We're just putting the graphical touches on that stuff right now. And then again, this is going to give us a regional look at the CIP summaries, the CIPs, all in one, under one umbrella, or 5 different umbrellas. Anyway. And then this is what you can essentially expect. So we have, and I think it was about 315. So the overall spending for fiscal year 22-23 is what's being represented here. And this is broke down into the 2 different components, and I'll show or walk through those as well. But in terms of the graph, we really have 2 sections to this, the gray right side and then the reddish left side. And this is representing growth or capacity projects that we are constructing through the region, and through the retrospective look at the information that the jurisdictions and entities provide us, we can understand what was dedicated by a developer. So we have growth that is provider built like a Tumwa or an RTC, and then the share of the overall growth that was constructed by a developer. So that again is the growth component of this, capacity projects. And then the right is community investment, where I like to think of this as we're reinvesting in ourselves. We're reconstructing any of the infrastructure that needs to be because of rehab or maintenance. And then you can see that the overall share for the pie is about 44% growth, and then approximately 57% is going to community investment. And then the little table down at the bottom is what we created in terms of going and filtering through the data, pulling out the data that we needed, and then putting those into particular bins. And we envision at some point in time being able to, and really similar to what we saw with the Truckee Meadows annual report, but to hover on a section, let's say of this graph right here, and to see what projects, maybe a list of projects, feed into these various components. So then this is the overall graph pie chart that we're seeing, and you can imagine 1 or 2 for each of the 5 domains, showing the different spending as we hone in on growth as we hone in on the retrospective for growth, developer share, and then community investment, and then also the forward-looking component in the CIP process. So that is really that's one of the bins,
Chris?
the other bin. Go ahead.
I'd like to jump in right there and just kind of expand on that a hair. Absolutely laying it out correctly, but I think what we want to make sure you guys understand is that we're doing this every year, and we're wrapping it into our Truckee Meadows annual report ask. And so we're going to start, we're establishing this. We don't have this right now, this regional synthesis of this information, but it is information that's out there. So we're utilizing each jurisdiction's and affected entities' annual comprehensive financial report process that is already mandated to go back and look at the previous fiscal year and see what was added to the asset list that starts getting depreciated. And through that, we can understand what capital improvements were actually made and what they cost and how much of that was dedicated, as Chris pointed out. And then further, we're going to divide, right, as we have with this graph, that spending, those projects, into those 2 buckets of, is it community investment or is it to accommodate growth, right? And so we're doing that for the retrospective, but we're also, to Chris's point, taking those 5-year CIPs that everyone already has to produce, they're already available, and we're just doing that same thing. Okay, these projects are listed, This one is for growth, this one is for rehab and community investment, and so we're creating that share looking forward into the future. And then, to your point, Chris, all of those price tags are filled up with different sized projects that are affecting different parts of town, and so we are still working to try to put all that together, right, and make sure that it all kind of is organized and aligns. I think with this first year of establishment of this process, we're really going to get the document, which describes how these entities and agencies work together to provide public facilities in the region, but also we're going to get that understanding of spending, and it's a living thing. So as we go, I think we'll be able to make it better, but it's really going to be cool in like 5 years, after we've tracked 5 years worth of data, right? And we can see the trend and really see how we are spending as a region and how that is interplaying with where we're seeing growth. Thanks, Chris, for letting me sidetrack it there for a second.
Oh, yeah, good. So this is, not to confuse too many bins, but we have the pipes bin, pipes and other infrastructure components that are being shown on GIS. Then we have the CIP bin, which is a spinning summary. So this is the CIP spinning summary bin. And then we have the pipes and other geographical information that is being represented here in this bin. And this is the LightBright map, infrastructure proximity, that we referred to through the 2019 regional plan update process. But this is similar, very similar to what Jeremy was saying in terms of collecting the data on an annual basis. So we're going to have a fairly up-to-date cut in terms of an annual or even more frequent refresh to the data that we have that feeds into our spatial modeling components so that we can look at up-to-date locations of pipes, roads, other data related to the 5 domains. And this helps us in terms of looking at our comparison of variables across different service domains, such as capacities, spinning that is occurring, and then areas served. And all this stuff feeds into our different efforts, such as the consensus forecast. And then through this, we can discover alignments and mismatches in terms of the public infrastructure that may help us understand whether an area is truly ready for development, looking at the 5 service domains, or if it is not quite ready, if there's an area that needs to be worked on, say schools or roads. And then this would all lead to accurate information describing, accurate and up-to-date information describing the spatial locations of infrastructure. So LightBright again, infrastructure proximity map. And then goal 3, design and implement policy improvements. And it became fairly clear to us through this process that we weren't going to be adding a policy at this point in time related to public infrastructure plan, but really updating policy PF3, which is the public infrastructure plan policy, to require the ongoing implementation or ongoing update for this process, implementation of the actual process, and then potential short and long-term policy implications, and the utilization of the public infrastructure plan data for the implementation of policy PF1, which is the policy that sets this list of facility and service standards that apply throughout the region. And the data, again, will be available to inform our existing processes, and this is something that we highlight, not replace the great work that's being done at the jurisdictions and entities. So again, we're just pulling all this information together and summarizing it so that we can understand it from regional perspective, not necessarily a jurisdiction or entity perspective. And a reminder, and basically just talked about this, but policy PF1, which sets the list of facility and service standards, this effort to understand each of these components at a greater level, both from the lines and pipes perspective as well as the spinning summaries, is going to allow us to better implement policy PF1, which not only benefits us, but it benefits the jurisdictions and the entities as well. And with that, so we do anticipate the full draft of the document be out for review this next week. And this is, it's not the actual document's not recreating all the public infrastructure information. It's really, I think, as Jeremy said, it's representing the regional perspective. And that will be available through the website, tmrpa.org/2024-RPU. And then again, no new policies proposed for inclusion during the regional this update process. And that concludes my presentation. I'll pass it back to Jer.
Thank you very much, Chris. And maybe if anyone has any questions about the public infrastructure plan right now, it'd be a good time.
Yeah, thank you. How does this inform, like, how RTC would plan? Like, they have their 5-year plan and a 20-year plan, I think, or 40-year plan, and they have, how does this integrate?
I think the best way to characterize that is that we're simply representing what they're doing. So they're still doing their great work. And we're pulling in their great work in terms of what was, the CIP retrospective. So we're going and getting their data and then putting it on a map or on a graph so that we have access to that from a regional point of view.
So it's easier for people to see? So we're reflecting the what is, not informing what could be?
Yes.
It's a kind of a...
If I may, there's a feedback there because we do
Yeah.
provide information to the RTC, for example, and to all the jurisdictions and entities. And so we're absolutely taking the information that exists and compiling it and getting that high-level regional look. But in terms of like the GIS data, we're taking that and we're making sure we have the latest and greatest, and then we're using it to inform our modeling efforts that then we feed to the RTC, and that becomes a component of how they create their project list, for example.
But you guys are so familiar, heavy users of GIS. It seems that you might even be able to take their data and make it even more user-friendly and present it in a different way that can be digested in a different format. You know what I'm saying? Like, use different types of tools that you might have that, as engineers, they're looking at what do we need to do to get the road built or whatever, but the public's often looking for different types of information. Is that
and
a something?
This really is part of what we're trying to achieve, is to create a document for everyone, for folks on this body, for the RPC, for the public, for staff, where, again, I go back to this, watching MASH as a kid, and in the square of the camp, they had the signpost, right, with, Paris is this way, 5,000 miles, and there's New York. And so I kind of see this document, both these efforts really, as the regional, first, getting our arms around it, right? And so, okay, I really want to know about schools, or I really want to know about RTC's work, transportation. I start maybe with this document, I understand the players, how they relate, and then the document actually has the links to take you further.
Okay.
So you can go into the data, or you can dig into the RTC's plan, or you can go to the school's plan. That's kind of helping to guide, and I think Chris really made a great point, and that is that we've been working with public works staff and the engineers and the planners at the local jurisdictions and entities, and everyone is doing an amazing job. And they really have the task of doing the thing that they're supposed to do for their jurisdiction or for their utility. And so I think we really just want to highlight all that work, bring it together, and provide that regional picture. And so I do think there's a feedback of the data, and you'll see the more light, bright maps coming, and that's another way we can sort of represent some of this data at the regional scale.
Thank you to everyone. It's really exciting. I think the public part of it is going to be really, really helpful. And to Ms. Durr's point and others, in terms of just being able to look at something from a lay person. You guys are so technical and it's lovely, but to a person just going there, I think to be able to break some things down that are technical to actually be a light, bright moment. Just trying. So.
There's just like 3 more slides, Madam Chair, if I may.
Thank you, yeah. And
Okay.
thanks. I just wanted to say that because I haven't
Thank
heard
you.
light bright in a long time.
Yeah.
And I felt like I needed to
Yeah.
get that off for those of you that
Right.
may understand what I'm saying.
Well, just to quickly
He's not finished. Thank
sort
you,
of wrap it up,
Smith.
this is the website where you can go and see all the versions of these documents, and where you'll see the final versions. Then we're putting it out there, so you can go there now. You can see version 2 of the Natural Resources Plan. You can see the redlined version of the regional plan that has the new policies and anything we're taking out in there. And the public infrastructure plan is forthcoming. It is drafted. We have created graphs. We promised the staff, and we have been working with staff and the public works engineers, planners at the jurisdictions and entities all along the way. But we promised we'd give them, a first crack at seeing it. So we're gonna get that out hopefully tomorrow. Give it some time, and then once we hear back, we'll get it up on the site. So that's where you can go to find that. Next slide, please. Just really quickly, there's just a couple of other minor things in the update. So one is that, per legal counsel's advice, we have added one more policy, which just recognizes that TMRPA staff uses digital data and digital maps in our conformance reviews. Because if you look at the paper maps that are in our plan, they're kind of, it's very difficult to do very specific planning work with that. We use the digital data. There's a few corrections we've noticed just over time that we're addressing. That's in that red line. there has been discussions and an action at the City of Reno, as I understand it recently, to approve a rollback of some of the sphere of influence areas for the City of Reno. Those are areas that are on public land, but that land has not been identified in the current lands bill draft. So it's public land that's going to be public for a long time. And we've been working with Reno staff, and it seems like that's all going. So there'll be a little bit of a rollback on the SOI for Reno, and we're going to add in some information about what has happened in terms of growth since 2019 in terms of our scenarios. So that's that. Let's just do a couple more slides. How do we get there? All right, so June 27th, we had that meeting. We had the July 25th RPC meeting. We're here today at August 8th, and we're talking about the products and where we're at, and we've given you the update, so you guys are aware of that. Next slide, please. Moving towards August 17th, we hope you all join us at Rancho San Rafael Park for our One Region event. We hang out in the Peavine Pavilion. There's going to be a bluegrass band. I think we have a little painting thing this year. It's going to be fun. So if you're interested in that, please come by. Let me know if you want any more info. We're going to try and have all of this stuff fairly well baked by August 22nd RPC meeting, where we will get acceptance by the RPC, the Technical Advisory Committee that really puts this regional plan forward, that we're ready to go. And then that would lead to the adoption process. Next slide, please. Which begins in September by state mandate, the state law. We're required to hold a public hearing of the RPC in each physical jurisdiction of the region in advance of bringing the updated regional plan to this body for final adoption. So we're going to start on September 12th at the Sun Valley Neighborhood Center for the unincorporated Washoe County location. Then we're going to City of Reno City Council Chambers on September 19th. And finally, September 26th, we'll be at the City of Sparks Council Chambers to get that final recommendation, we hope, from the RPC at that time. And then boom, to the next slide, October 10th, which will be exactly 5 years to the day from the adoption of the 2019 plan. So we're still on track, especially if Jeremy gets busy and finishes off that draft and gets it out there. So, okay, with that, thank you very much for your attention and time today, and I'm happy to answer any other questions you have.
Thank you. Any questions?
Just a quick one. Let's say you're holding these public workshops and someone comes in and says, gosh, I don't see that donkey migration plan. I mean, do you have the ability to do a thing, react to their comment or request, or is it just like, well, this is where we are now, we'll take that forward for your next plan or something? What are you thinking?
I mean, I think we have some ability to respond, right, to that feedback. And I think what it could end up doing is maybe extending the adoption process.
I see.
You know, but I would like to also hear legal counsel's take on that.
Thank you, Jessica Prunty, for the record. So each of the 3 hearings in each of the jurisdictions, if the public brings forward or anybody else brings forward something to the Regional Planning Commission, that the Regional Planning Commission as the technical advisory committee to this body determines should require a change in the regional plan itself and the policies that are being proposed. That could be proposed, but it depends where in the layout of these meetings.
Where what?
Where in what meeting that happens at. So if it happened at the first meeting, that change could be brought forth to the second 2 meetings. But the last meeting is where they make the final recommendation to adopt whatever is presented to them to bring to this body. When it comes to this body, if this body says, we want to send it back down to the Regional Planning Commission because we want you to address this specific subject area.
Like we might have a hot topic or something that we didn't make it in or something?
Potentially. You know, I think hopefully the reason why Director Smith and his staff have been bringing such regular updates is to try to avoid that type of last-minute overhaul. But this body is the body that adopts the plan.
Okay.
And the update. So you have the power at that meeting if the body collectively decides to remand it back down to the Regional Planning Commission for additional work. And then we would have to start the process over again if
With
there was
3
changes
meetings?
made. Mhm.
I
Thank
can't
you.
remember this from other years, this 3-meeting kind of endless loop thing. You do too? Yeah, I kind of remember it.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair.
Ms. Bybee?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just want to say, having served on this Regional Planning Board several years ago, I think I've been off about 5 or 6 years. Actually, 5 years because we were talking about and starting this. So I guess I've been off almost 5 years. So I was here at the beginning when we talked about this, and to see the amount of work that all of you have done, to see really the amount of, and you guys have been awesome at data, always, Dr. Smith and your team, but really to look at the whole, where we are now, how far you've come, and yeah, it's been 5 years to get there, but I just see so much of what this plan represents, of taking all the data of what, and adding the natural resources and adding the public infrastructure, which are two huge things that were not there, but are critically important as we look at growth and planning in the region, and to put that all together for all of us, whether it's Sparks or Reno or Washoe County, or it's water or sewer, for the utilization, potential developers, everything we do in this whole big bowl, for all that data to be there, I just see it beneficial, such an incredibly beneficial document for all of us, and everything put together, because we know what we're doing in Sparks, and Reno and Washoe County do, and the school district does, but we're still kind of in silos, because not all these things are done. Some things we do regionally. You know, we do a lot of things. We do homeless. We do trying to work on housing. But we still do our own work in our own, jurisdictions. So putting this together so that all of us are sharing what's going on and what we're spending CIP dollars are, I think the coordination and benefit for the region is pretty profound. And I just can't even tell you how impressed I am with where we are at the end, and glad that I get to be here to see the end, because not serving on this board anymore and just being an alternate today. Very impressive, and I think it'll be highly utilized by all of us, so thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Abbott, do you have anything that you'd like to add? Or any questions? Hearing none. I'm going to go ahead and move then. This is an action item, and I'd like to entertain a motion to approve.
Madam Chair, I move to accept the report.
Thank you. We have a motion
Second.
by Ms. Vanderwill and a second by Ms. Dorr. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Great job. Thank you. I'd like to move to item 9, the reports. Ms. Smith from the Washoe County School District.
Thank you. All right, everyone. So Monday's a very exciting day, back to school, and I'd like to lead off with that. And then also an expression of gratitude. All of your agencies work so hard to make sure that the residents in your communities and your areas know that with the first day of school also brings lots of little feet walking to schools, and then also additional buses that maybe we've all forgotten about over the summer. So just wanted to say thank you so much for all of your governments for continuing to amplify our own back-to-school campaigns and reminding our residents and neighbors that we will have so many kids and families back on the streets. In addition to that, I just also wanted to add that we will also be restarting our 5-year plan following the completion of this 5-year plan. The school district takes that as a jumping off point, working, of course, with all of our individual entities and our master plan, and then, of course, we bring that to the Planning Commission as well. So what we have here in front of us is some exciting news. So we know, or if you don't know, we are rebuilding Vaughn Middle School, and that's a point of incredible pride for us. So what I wanted to show today was some of the work that's actually happened. So to clarify for anyone following along or with us today, Vaughn Middle School already exists. This is a rebuild of an existing school within an existing community. But a rebuild means a new opportunity to engage with the city, to engage with neighbors, and to make sure that when we do this rebuild, we are applying all of the best knowledge, feedback. So this is what this looks like. So this is what we've invested with in close partnership with the City of Reno. We also brought this project voluntarily to the Ward 3 NAB. And in response to the neighbors and the city, we worked collaboratively on the plan that you see right here. And I can outline what some of those things are. And the reason why I bring this up is because the school district always endeavors to be a better partner. We know that there is a history in terms of how schools were planned in the past. And in recent years, we've made a concerted effort to make sure that we are pulling in all of the entities that we coexist with and the neighborhoods. So what you see up here is new pedestrian ramps at Cordone and Vassar. We've widened to 6-foot wide sidewalks at Yorrie, Bresson, and Vassar. And then we also have safety crosswalks and school zone flashers at multiple intersecting roadways. And 2 bulb outs, which this is not the, so you can see the little yellow stars are the 3 bulb outs. I did not know what a bulb out was. It is not a gardening or a lighting term, and that is the next image that we have here, so that we can see what we're going to be installing. This is not the same as what we'll have on those streets. It's the same design, but it's not an aerial shot because the work isn't done yet. But this is what it looks like. So what a bulb out is, and we made these decisions in partnership with the City of Reno. So it creates a psychological impact of slowing the traffic. So it shortens the length of the crosswalk, and then it also makes the roadway appear smaller as well too with that sidewalk expansion. And so all of that is designed for traffic calming around schools. So just wanted to share the work that's happening and the work that's to come with all of that. And I think that's what I have for the update for now. I have something else, but I'll save that for item 10.
Thank you. Well, now we all know what a bulb out is, for those who, I didn't know what
I
that
didn't
was
know
either.
what
I
it
was
was.
curious, so thank you for satisfying that information. I'll move now to members and directors' reports.
Madam Chair, I have a very brief report. I just want to, again, plug the event, August 17th, from 11 to 2 p.m. at Rancho San Rafael. Just an update, we're currently working on the 2024 consensus forecast. Just yesterday, I was in this room, and we had the Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission meeting. We always take the population forecast and compare it to the identified sustainable water resources to make sure that the population we're forecasting can be served with sustainable water. So that process is in place, and we'll be bringing that in October so you can see that final product. And then with that, our next regularly scheduled meeting will be in this room, October 10th, and ideally, we'll be bringing that regional plan for adoption. So look forward to that date. Thank you very much.
What time was that, the event?
Yep, the event is from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Peavine Pavilion.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. I'll move now to legal counsel report.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Jessica Prunty for the record. I only have one item to report upon. Dr. Smith's evaluation and contract will also be an item, or 2 items, at our upcoming October meeting. I will be circulating the evaluation form for all of the members of the RPGB to complete and return to me in advance of the meeting so I can compile the results and present it to this body. So be on a lookout for an email within the next couple weeks from me. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you.
I have a question for our
Sure.
legal counsel. Ms. Prunty, and maybe this is a Dr. Smith question too. Some time ago, we sent from this body a proposal to the Planning Commission that had to do with setting a threshold for schools related to what is a project of regional significance, what isn't. And I just wondered, do you have an update on that? We haven't met or talked about that for a long time.
I don't have an update currently for you. The Regional Planning Commission has met subsequent to this board's meeting, I believe, is when, probably 2022.
Yeah.
Where there was action taken and a direction to take it back down to the Regional Planning Commission. As you may recall, the Regional Planning Commission is the sole body with statutory authority to make any changes to the projects of regional significance guidelines. Thereafter, to the best of my recollection, I don't have a chronology prepared in front of me, there was a action taken to meet with the subcommittee of the projects of regional significance
Of this
subcommittee.
body, or-
Of the Planning Commission.
They had their own.
They had their own. And then subsequently, there were several meetings there.
Yeah.
And my recollection of the last meeting is that there was not an appetite of the Regional Planning Commission to move forward because they were still looking for additional information upon
Okay.
which to base a decision.
So it's not that they don't have appetite, but they're still gathering data.
I believe, do not quote me, that is
Well, perhaps-
where we left it, but we can absolutely bring an informational item to this body at a future meeting.
Would be very helpful.
I would suggest that maybe that not be October 10th, as we
Yeah.
have a fairly important item already on the agenda, but we can certainly bring that forward to this body in December for your consideration and give a full recitation of the chronology, what has happened, and where we are at
Well,
today.
do you think it would be possible, and maybe I should be asking under agenda items, but perhaps you could just do a memo to summarize, bring us up to speed?
I
Just
could
let us know what's
absolutely
going
do
on.
that.
I don't know that December 10th is very far away. It's like 6 months. And if there's something, it would be good to know just where they are.
And if the chair pleases and wants this to be on the October 10th agenda, we can certainly bring it forward then. But in the meantime, I can absolutely prepare a memo of what
That'd be,
has happened.
what do you think? That'd be good.
Mr. Reese?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think for my part, it just highlights that this is an unresolved issue. And so although I'll leave it to my colleague and Chair Andriola about when to bring it forward, it seems like it's something that we in the past have desired to have a substantive conversation on. We sent it out to various subcommittees, the Planning Commission, or Regional Planning Commission, and their own subcommittee. So it seems like it's all out there when I would like to have that conversation brought back here. I think it's an important conversation for us to have, and I know that my colleague, Councilmember Dewar, had started that conversation way back when. I think you said it was 2022. It might have actually been just before that. But regardless, I think it's still something that continues to have some impact on our bodies, not just here, but on our body at the City of Reno. It obviously had tremendous impacts at the City of Sparks when they considered the Hug High School project. And for my part, what I'd like to see is some resolution, some movement on it. I do believe that, charter schools continue to have sort of evaded capture and review, and also our own school district at one point in time had some concerns about, and I voiced those concerns at this body, about what amounted to projects of regional significance and why. So again, I think we're just all at that point where we need to come back to it. It's gotten a little bit further away from us than I had hoped, but not by anyone's fault, but just sometimes that's how government moves. So for my part and role, I would like to see it here and think that it's a good conversation for us to have.
Well, and also, and why it's so, you encapsulated that very well. But lots of schools are being proposed. It seems to be speeding up, not slowing down. And we're even talking at Reno about changing the way we review all schools and which ones need to go to the Planning Commission and which ones need to be a staff review right now. So in the next 6 months, I think you'll see a change at City of Reno and how we do that. So it would be good to kind of marry those conversations up here too. Yeah.
Absolutely. I hear the request. I will be responsive to the request.
Okay, cool.
And there can be a robust discussion at both bodies about PRS,
Yeah.
other mechanisms available on the regional level.
Thank you. Any other questions for legal counsel?
We have Ms. Smith.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. As a non-voting member, I very much appreciate my colleagues here bringing that up. I will add that it may be of benefit, if the chair agrees, to even take a step back with this and really show where this conversation began, because by my timing, this was actually nearly 5 years ago.
I was going to say 2019 for me.
Correct. And the reason why I bring that up is because I do believe that recognition is due to the 3 members of this governing board who had foresight and wisdom in their governance, and that was Reno City Councilwoman Naomi Dorr, Sparks Mayor Ed Lawson, and former Commission Chair Von Hartung. And then, of course, we did ultimately pass something and send it down about 2 years ago. So since we have many new members, and this is quite a topic in our community, my request to the chair would be that perhaps we even take a step back, understand this holistically, so that we can understand where the conversation began, which was well before anything in front of us now, and where we are at the moment. The other thing I will add is that I do have a request for there to be a transparency around reasons behind a stall. I believe that these are, it's a public understanding to know the pushback and the concerns that came from the community. And so it's important to understand why some of these things have been paused in their progress.
Thank you.
Thank you. I believe that concludes my report.
Thank you. So we'll move now. Mr. Abbott, do you have anything?
Nope, I'm good to go.
Thank you. We'll move now to item 10, board comments and requests for future addenda items, which kind of hurt a little bit, but anyway, anybody have any comments or requests for future agenda items?
Just the one.
Yep, I heard. I've got notes. Thank you. Mr. Abbott, do you have anything?
Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move to public comment. Mr. Clerk?
We have none.
Okay. Do we have any written correspondence?
No, there is none.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and call for adjournment at 3:20 on the nose. Thank you.